Hello everyone, this is the finale of What If Naruto Had the Ultimate Dojutsu, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Anbu were on the scene. Jonan had been hopping across the rooftops. Many people could see the fires of the Hokage mansion as the building slowly began to crumble to the ground. Put out the fire and find Hokage-sama. One of the Anbu captains shouted and the others quickly vanished without a word while Kushina dropped down to the ground. What happened? Kushina asked angrily, and seeing the head of the Anbu department, one of the men, saluted her. Kushina-sama, we are still trying to figure that out. Our reports say that someone has entered into Konoha's territory, but as of yet no one has located Hokage-sama, Boruto said, and Kushina snarled. Damn it, Kushina said to herself before she noticed the Jonin begin to handle the fires. She was grateful for that, but not grateful for the fact that her son was missing. Lots of these things had been pissed her off lately. Akashi-sama, Kushina turned around and she noticed Hawk drop to the ground using her code name for this situation. Status, Kushina said, and Hawk gave a firm nod of his head. We haven't sustained much injury, but we're still working to find the cause of the destruction. In any case, we're going to be busy. Where is Hokage-sama? Hawk asked while Kushina closed her eyes. She shook her head and Hawk looked down, but his face didn't betray her emotions. Lucky he was wearing a mask. Hawk just nodded his head with a small sigh before they heard screaming. Hawk, Akashi, and Boruto turned their heads to see one Chunin drop to the ground. They seemed confused before the air became saturated in malicious chakra. Slowly, but surely they noticed someone emerge from the fire. Him wearing his Akatsuki cloak as with the rest of his organization, but based on the information Kushina had on all Akatsuki members, he had to have been new, because she didn't have any information on him. His lifeless eyes, his firm stance, and his sword which emitted a somewhat ungodly death feeling. Kushina only watched as the Chunin in front of her slowly began to assimilate into his sword, letting it glow a dark purple before it settled back into its silver metal color. The Jonin and Chunin who were working on the Hokage mansion backed away while he held up his eyes. Where is the Nibi Jinchuriki? He asked, and everyone widened their eyes. Akatsuki. One of the Jonin growled out before Kushina quickly took handle of the situation. Everyone stay back. Assist in the efforts of the village evacuation. Gather the Hyuga and find Hokage-sama's signature. I will hold him here, Kushina said seriously, and everyone looked at her in surprise as the head of the Anbu department quickly took her sword and held it to her side. I do not wish to kill you. This is just the will of my master, he said while Kushina stepped forward. Sorry, but I don't feel like answering you, Databane, Kushina said, and the aggressor closed his eyes with a sigh of his head. Then I, Sato Saranzo, have no choice but to end your life, he said as he dashed for her, and Kushina did the same. They held their swords up and brought him down, instantly cracking the ground from a sudden release of pent-up chakra. Kushina could see Sato's sword flare while hers did the same. Oi Sato, where is the Kyubi Jinchuriki? I don't see him. Leader-sama's going to be made if I blew him up him, Diodora shouted, and Kushina looked overhead to see another Akatsuki member flying over the village. So that's how they got in. Damn it all to hell. Kushina growled in her thoughts before focusing back to what she was doing, which was dealing with Sato. The brunette quickly backed away as the ground erupted from Kushina's chakra chains, getting Sato to backflip through the air and land back near the flaming building. Kushina held her sword before she quickly blurred out of sight. Sato raised a slight eyebrow before ducking underneath Kushina's blade. He turned his head and noticed her right behind him. He also noted the smirk on her face as she used the momentum of her swing to bring her foot crashing into his side, sending Sato rolling across the ground before he got to his feet and blocked another strike from Kushina. Twirling his body through the ground to avoid Kushina's strikes, Sato just continued to keep himself composed as the Red Death vigorously attacked him. She swept at his feet, but he easily jumped over it and flipped away with much agility in his footsteps. He dropped down before he noticed Itachi in front of him. Sato brought his sword to defend as Itachi clashed his kunai against Sato's Raijin. The sparks flew from their weapons before Itachi was surprised that his kunai had easily been broken into pieces. He and Sato stared at each other before the elder Uchiha's eyes strained. Sato swung his sword for Itachi's frame and quickly plunged his sword through Itachi's sea. Itachi winced while Sato just frowned before Itachi dispelled into crows. Sato only had one thought. Weak, he thought before he quickly his arm with the Raijin. B slipped through the sword before it pulsed and the shock wave of it quickly took Sato from the genjutsu he was in as he noticed Kushina quickly charging for him. Sato narrowed his eyes before he sped off towards her. Ruen Senkai, swirling dragon flame, Sato muttered as his sword bursted in black flames. Kushina quickly noticed the action before her own sword began to glow with her chakra. Mugenin ko Sanran, infinite light scattering, Kushina shouted as her sword suddenly pulsed in a blinding light while she and Sato clashed their swords together. Dark flames battled white light as Kushina's face, and therefore emotions, was hidden from Sato's view, but she was indeed glaring hard at him while Sato just cracked a small smile. You are very good Red Death, but you are still weak, Sato said before the dark flames overtook Kushina's white light as she quickly cursed then jumped into the air to avoid the bursts of flames that rammed into the nearby buildings. Kushina watched the scene with surprise. There weren't that many people better than her in Kenjutsu. Virtually no one was. Naruto was at least her level while Yugao being a ways under them both. The swordsmen of the mist were some of those people and even a few Kumo shinobi would make her get heated, but for one of her techniques to be overtaken. Who was this guy? Kushina's danger senses peaked as she turned to see Sato right behind her. He quickly went to deliver a punch to her face and Kushina was ready to block it before she noticed that Itachi had caught it and quickly tried to knee Sato in the stomach only for it to be blocked by the swordsman's own knee. Itachi and Sato stared at each other once again, but Itachi could feel control of his genjutsu slipping each time they looked before they jumped away. Each landed on the ground while Itachi and Kushina looked at Sato while Sato looked at them. Itachi, stand back, Kushina said closing her eyes. Itachi turned to Kushina before he noticed her chakra increase slightly. Itachi then jumped back as purple seals appeared around Kushina's body. They dispelled quickly and the wind shifted before a heavy burst of chakra came from Kushina's body causing her red hair to rise because of it. Somehow her mask stayed on as she grabbed her sword by its hilt and Sato suddenly grimaced as he noticed Kushina him with her sword. Itachi stood speechless as Kushina's speed seemed to be more than it was before. She was a true blur. I will get serious now, Kushina said while Sato growled slightly. Very well. I shall indulge you, Sato said and Kushina widened her eyes from behind her mask to notice Sato burst in black flames before she retracted her sword only to see nothing before the flames disappeared. Above you, Itachi warned and Kushina looked up as she noticed Sato coming down fiercely while she nodded and jumped into the air. Both clashed their swords once again while Deodara snarled. Oi Sato, I asked you a question. Answer me. Deodara shouted overhead while Itachi and Kushina shifted the gaze to him. He was your responsibility, Sato responded while Deodara snorted and folded his arms. He continued to watch the Kenjutsu fight between Kushina and Sato through his eye scope with a grin across his face. He didn't think it was going to be that easy. Konoha will make anyone Hokage these days. Tetsugiri, Iron Sword S, Kushina shouted as she her sword into the ground before, with a flick of the wrist, sending a heavy wave of light blue chakra scattering across the ground towards Sato while the black-haired young-looking man just watched the incoming attack. He held out his sword. He then it into the ground and Kushina watched as the ground exploded from his sword and its energy blocking her technique as it dispelled into the air. Kushina didn't seem fazed, which was something Sato would have applauded her for if he had the life in his eyes to do so. Seeing the same smirk on Kushina's face alerted Sato's senses as he heard swirling in the air. Rasengan, Sato looked up and noticed a blue sphere in a second Kushina's hand before it against his body and into the ground in a large explosion. Kushina continued to grin before she noticed that the body that should have been there wasn't as it dispelled into a pile of black leaves. Interesting, Kushina said and chakra pulsed once again as she turned her head to notice him coming within range of her. Kushina quickly moved to defend before Sato was forced to jump back out of the way from the large fireball that went sailing into the already burning Hokage mansion. Landing on the ground, Sato and Kushina turned their heads to see Itachi along the roof of one of the buildings. Weasel, Kushina said using Itachi's old name while Itachi strained his eyes over Sato's form. Amaterasu. Itachi shouted, covering Sato's body in black flames. Kushina blinked and soon Itachi took his place at her side. Have they found Sochi yet? Kushina asked and Itachi frowned. Not yet. I came here to aid you. Kakashi, Anko-san, and the others will be here in a few moments, Itachi said while Kushina nodded, turning back to Sato before all heard snickering. Uchiha Itachi. Finally I can pay you for leaving Akatsuki. No one is going to get in my way now. Say goodbye as you realize you were beaten by my art. Everyone looked up as they noticed a large bird sailing for Itachi and Kushina's location. Sato didn't seem to care either way as the flames of Itachi's attack were slowly absorbed by his sword. Heaven's judgment upon someone like him. Foolish. Meanwhile, Deodara's attack continued to near them. Itachi and Kushina cursed and were ready to jump back before they gasped as a mixture of sand and iron sand covered them each while the bird exploded against them, both shaking the ground and destroying buildings. Deodara cackled madly, looking down before that grin was replaced with shock as the two individual sands began to regress from Kushina and Itachi's body before the two found themselves caught by two pure white tails that held them in the air. These tails. This is. Itachi widened his eyes before the others heard a shout. Susanoo. They heard from inside the burning Hokage mansion as it exploded in white fire as everyone noticed 7 more white tails spring from the ground, protecting every single inhabitant that had been in the Hokage mansion before it exploded. The civilians gasped while the large white guardian of Naruto quickly roared, its armor forming around it while the Rokudaime Hokage unfolded his arms and opened his eyes, showing the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan in one eye and his Shinseinigan in the other. Sato raised an eyebrow while Deodara breathed a sigh of relief. Phew, I didn't kill him. That means I can still take him to Akatsuki. This might be fun after all, Deodara said to himself before he noticed Naruto's eyes staring coldly at him. The blonde was not happy. Not at all. The sight of those eyes boring through his head made Deodara scowl slightly at being treated like he was an inferior person. Naruto's Susanoo opened up and the blonde allowed the civilians to run off before taking notice of Itachi and Kushina. Kar-san, Naruto said while Kushina sighed. Please don't do that. We have enough to worry about. Especially if our Rokudaime is going to be S. Kushina said and Naruto shrugged his shoulder as the sand began to form around him. Can you take care of things here? Naruto asked and they both nodded while Naruto weaved his hand sending the sand into the air before he quickly jumped to a building. Come and get me Hokage-sama. Deodara shouted, flying around on another bird that he made while Naruto's sand quickly appeared in front of him and began to expand into a claw reaching for a grab, but Deodara was too fast and easily dodged it. He looked back at Naruto's eyes never leaving his form. Art is an explosion Hokage-sama. Deodara shouted at the top of his voice as Naruto noticed clay bombs quickly began to fall from the sky. His Susanoo instantly reacted, opening its mouth, getting a look of surprise from Deodara. He was even more surprised when a massive flame roared from its maw, quickly rushing towards Deodara's location. "OF, that's not cool," Deodara said, taking evasive action, and he noticed the Guardians' tails rise into the air as the tips of them coursed in lightning. The shots fires in unison as Deodara was forced to dodge left and right. Naruto watched him continue to fly around as Deodara growled. He was dodging sand, iron sand, fire, and lightning. How was this fair? Naruto quickly followed him and dashed off for Deodara on one of the houses. He jumped on another one and Deodara grinned as he held up a hand sign. "That's it. Follow me, you blonde bastard," Deodara said as Naruto continued in his endeavors to catch the Akatsuki member. He landed on another building and Deodara's grin heightened. "Katsu!" he shouted and the building was engulfed in a large explosion while Deodara chuckled. What's wrong, Hokage? Too fast-paced for you?" Deodara asked before he saw Naruto emerge from the house unharmed thanks to his own layer of protection. "Not fast enough. Yoten, yokai no jutsu," Naruto shouted, spewing a stream of lava over Deodara's head while the blonde Akatsuki member cursed and flew off, escaping the lava's wrath while Naruto watched him leave. However, he heard more whistling in the air and by this time knew what to expect as he jumped into the air, dodging two birds that were on a collision course for each other. He noticed Deodara didn't seem to care before Naruto noticed the birds quickly come together, then they flew up, missing each other by inches as they went up to Naruto while the blonde narrowed his eyes. so he can control them to converge and not just go in a straight line, Naruto thought before he took a kunai in his hands and threw it at Deidara. He watched the incoming kunai before blocking it with his own. Was that supposed to do something? He asked with a weird smile on his face before he noticed Naruto disappear in a yellow flash and appear right next to him. Deidara winced as he felt lightning course through his body. "You're getting on my nerves," Naruto stated while Deidara looked back. "The Hiraishin, you son of a b." Deidara snarled out and he noticed Naruto's Susanoo quickly grab him in its tail while its eyes glared down at him like he was an insect just waiting to be squashed. "You're not very tough," Naruto said, crushing Deidara, not surprised that he was clay that smeared his Susanoo's armor. Naruto looked back and he noticed a spider on his shoulder. "Katsu!" Deidara shouted and the spider exploded against Naruto's form while Deidara chuckled. He nodded his head in agreement with his actions. "Hey Blondie L." Deidara looked down and he noticed Naruto give him a small smirk. Deidara snarled while Naruto folded his arms. "Ya missed," Naruto said before he dashed off with a weird sound of whoop, 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 across the rooftops, getting an annoyed look from Deidara before he flew off after Naruto screaming at the blonde for him to take things seriously. Meanwhile Itachi and Kushina were dealing with Sato as Kushina slightly huffed. Itachi wiped a bead of sweat from his face while Sato stared at them both. "You will fall today if you do not hand over the Nibi and Nanabi Jinchuriki," Sato said while they glanced to each other. Pushing chakra into her legs, Kushina blasted off for Sato, holding her sword back while Sato charged at her. "Above you again," Itachi warned, and Kushina looked up to see another Sato over her head. He came down and Kushina was forced to draw a second sword as she blocked both Satos with her sword, their weight coming against her, but she wasn't the head Anbu before nothing. She was just as strong as the Sannin, and damn it if she was going to lose like this. "Kaiten, you know jutsu," Itachi shouted, blowing a huge fireball in Kushina's and Sato's direction. Both noticed the incoming fire and Kushina quickly jumped away while the two Satos tried to do the same, but both noticed that they were trapped by chains and couldn't react when the flames passed over them. Kushina gave an accepting nod of her head while Itachi narrowed his eyes. "Is that it?" he asked, but he felt chakra pulse as the flames quickly turned black. Itachi and Kushina watched as the flames were quickly focused into Sato's sword and vanished without a trace. "Did he just absorb your chakra?" Kushina asked, and Itachi frowned. "I know of only 2 people in the group who were able to do that," Itachi said before he gasped. Kushina did the same as Itachi was staring face to face with Sato as his sword stuck into Itachi's stomach. "What happened? I didn't even see him move," Itachi thought, and he suddenly felt his chakra quickly being drained. And what was it? Was his soul being pulled as well? What was going on here? This was dangerous. Very, very dangerous. "Gatsuga." Sato turned his head and jumped away as 2 drills passed him, forcing him to back away from Itachi and what he was doing as the latter fell to the ground in shock and exhaustion. He clutched his wound while Kushina gently held him up. "Are you all right?" she asked, and Itachi nodded with a light pant in his voice. "Don't let his sword touch you. It's like being touched by death itself," Itachi said while Kushina looked back to see Sume and Kuromaru right in front of her. "Hey, sorry for being late. Had to find out where the action was." "Where is Naruto?" Sume asked, and Kushina breathed a sigh. "He's dealing with the other Akatsuki member. I sensed Tsunade going to his location. She'll be joining up with him in a few minutes," Kushina said, and Sume nodded, turning back to Sato. "You have a lot of nerve coming to our village out in the open. That's a mistake that's going to cost you, ya know," Sume said while Sato glared at her. "Do not interfere," was all Sato said while Sume chuckled. Who did this guy think she was that she wouldn't have her fun in something like this? After all, she was the wife of the Rokudaime Hokage. "Sume-sama, be careful. His sword, something wrong with it," Itachi said, and Sume glanced to the sword before giving a feral grin. "I'll be keeping that in mind," she said, getting ready to strike. "Wrong, you 3 are going to fall back now." The 3 turned their heads as they noticed Ni and Nana drop to the ground. Sato stared at the 2 for a few seconds before an overwhelming feeling of hatred with a mixture of joy entered into his body. He unconsciously licked his lips as Nibi and Nanabi dropped to the ground. Sume, not liking being ordered around, snarled. "What are you talking about?" Sume asked while Ni moved to drop in front while Nana came in front of her. Just when QB isn't around. Nibi and I will have to get him from the village somehow, Nanabe thought to herself while Ni turned around. This isn't someone to be trifled with. Kushina, the evacuation is partly done. We're going to need space and lots of it. Ni said, and Kushina realized what they both wanted and slowly nodded her head. Soon we're going to go. We'll leave it to them for right now. We have to get Itachi to Haku, Kushina said, and Soom turned around to see Itachi cough slightly before snarling. Fine. Kuromaru, take him. We'll be right behind you, Soom said, and Kuromaru gave a nod before taking the eldest Uchiha and racing off along with Kushina and Soom. The head of the Anbu and the second head of the UNI clan looked back as they left Nibi and Nanabe where they were. I remember you from the Sanbi mission. I have nothing against you, or maybe I do. Seeing the two of you gets me so angry and yet so happy. I wonder why that is. I suppose your deaths will give me the answer, Sato said as he quickly appeared behind Nanabe and sent a kick to her face. Nanabe ducked under it and twisted her body to try to kick Sato in the face, but it didn't work as he easily blocked her. Sato gave a small grin before he noticed Nibi jump over Nanabe's sea. She quickly punched him in the sea, getting a cough from him before a burst of her chakra powered Nibi's fist as she sent him flying into a building. Never again. I'll never let you do it again. Nibi shouted as she blasted forward, charging Sato with Nanabe right behind her. They both noticed the building explode and disintegrate in black, dark, evil chakra as it fell to the ground. Sato couldn't stop his grin as he, Nibi and Nanabe clashed. Nanabe jumped over his sword swipe while Nibi quickly kicked him into the air. Sato had blocked the brunt of the assault before he noticed Nanabe and Nibi right next to him. Nanabe held out her hand and Nibi grabbed it as Nana proceeded to violently spin her through the air. Nibi coated her body in chakra as Nanabe flung her, and Sato was graced by the sight of Nibi's body coated in blue fire as she into his sword with her claws. The Raijin pinged and that sound violently assaulted Sato's ears before he grabbed Nibi's kimono and quickly trapped her, sending her spiraling into the ground. Yes, the two of you are much more powerful than that redhead woman who I was fighting. She wasn't a concern for me, but it was hard to hold back so much, Sato said while Nanabe quickly picked up Nibi. The two-tailed Bayu growled, getting her chakra to flare before taking a hand sign. Neko Hitoma, Nibi shouted, sending several fireballs towards Sato, getting him to quickly dash to the side. He gripped his sword and performed an arc S towards them, sending out a pulse of black chakra. Nanabe pushed Nibi out of the way while she jumped back as well. The chakra tore through the ground as both were horribly surprised at the intent to split them in half. Sato took a deep breath before he dashed at them both once again. Knowing that she would be fine, Nanabe quickly raced off for him as well. She was able to stop him mid-swung as she grabbed the handle that he was holding on the sword. Both of them glared at each other as their chakra flared indefinitely, getting the ground to crack around them. The Forsaken Son of Kami and the seven-tailed Bayu pulsed their chakra through the ground while Nibi jumped to her feet and quickly hopped off Nanabe's shoulders. Swirling through the air, she dropped her leg in a heel kick as Nanabe and Sato jumped away. Nibi, we have to get out of here. There is too much destruction of Naruto-kun's village here, Nanabe said while Nibi snarled. You think he's just going to let us take him out of here? Nibi asked, and Nanabe shook her head with a sigh as they noticed Sato coming for them. We're going to need something drastic here, Nanabe thought to herself. God damn it, Kyubi, where could you possibly be at a time like this? With Kyubi and Team Asuma. Samehada snickered as Kyubi and Hiden clashed against each other. It was stressful for Hiden to not have any chakra to power his moves, since Samehada would just absorb it all and share it with Kyubi. Not that she ever needed it. You're quite good, but not good enough, Kyubi said, running up one of the ruined trees while Hiden grew a tick mark. He quickly followed her as they jumped around the place, clashing together and kicking at each other to gain the advantage over the other. Samehada clicked in its usual language as Hiden swung left and right against Kyubi's form while she continued to dodge and evade easily. For someone like her who had been alive for this long, then her eyes were more than used to things like this. Kyubi looked down as she noticed Kakashi and the rest of Team Asuma dealing with Kakazu as the missing nin from the destroyed Taki gave a light grin. Now you will all Raiten, Gian, Kakazu shouted, and a thick burst of lightning poured from one of his masked demons, letting it tear the ground as it made its way towards them. Ino and Chuji quickly jumped out of the way while Kakashi held out his hand. the lightning S against him before Kakashi pushed his chakra to redirect it and sent it and quickly dispelled the burst of lightning with a light huff. So he is able to use all the elements from those masks of his. Shikamaru, be on your guard, Kakashi said, and Shikamaru gave a nod before their heads turned right as they noticed one of the demons coming for them. Shikamaru jumped away while Kakashi took a kunai and went into the air. He hopped over it while Chuji quickly sent a punch towards Kakazu, but it was easily blocked, getting the Akamaiki to gasp until he was kicked hard in the stomach, sending him spiraling across the ground. Chuji, Ino shouted, and Kakazu finished another hand sign before Kakashi came swirling down to the ground as he quickly formed his own. Kaiten, Zukoku, fire release. Intelligent hard work, Kakazu shouted as his fire masked demon opened its mouth, sending out a large fire, surprising the others before they noticed. Kanari jumped down to the ground with Samehada and quickly downward, splitting the fire in half and sending it in opposite directions. Samehada clicked before it tapped her shoulder angrily while Kanari snickered. Too hot for you. Oh, stop being so stingy. Kyubi said to Samehada while the sentient sword, but didn't do anything other than that. Oi, don't ignore me, you be. Hiden shouted as he came crashing down to the ground, and in an impressive rebound quickly charged for Kyubi while Kanari jumped into the air, revealing Kakashi having finished his hand signs. Kaiten, Kiryu Enden no Jutsu, Kakashi shouted, spewing the flames from his mouth towards Hiden and Kakazu while they both narrowed their eyes. One of the demons quickly swooped in and pushed Hiden out of the way while the flames passed them both and into the burning trees of the wasteland. How about a little notice next time? Hiden shouted to Kakazu while the latter snorted and folded his arms. I won't be saving you next time. Remember that, he said, and Hiden snarled before turning back to Kanari and the others. Maybe you both should pay attention to where others are. Kanari said, getting the others to look at her before they heard shouting and looked up to see Kanari coming down in a pool of flame as she into Kakazu, pushing him into the ground, getting a surprised look from Hiden. Everyone blinked before they noticed one of Kakazu's mask deep in Samehada's jaws before the sentient sword crushed it easily. Kanari wiped her cheek and smiled sweetly while Hiden snarled. You damn bee. Hold still. Hiden shouted, charging back at Kanari while Kakashi went out and followed him. Shikamaru, remember the plan. Kakashi shouted back and Shikamaru nodded once again as Kanari stopped Hiden's assault. They glared at each other, and if it wasn't for the fight then Hiden would have fell in love with the glare that Kyubi was sending him, but she didn't care. As she said, she was a mother and she was spoken for. Backflipping through the air, Kanari jumped up before she gasped and noticed her leg was grabbed by a long tentacle arm. Don't you ever stay down. Kanari shouted before Kakazu swung her across the ground, dirtying her kimono, and then sent her flying into the trees before his fire demon and wind demon stood together. Burn to ashes. Kaiten, Zukoku, Futon, Atsugai, Kakazu shouted one after the other, and everyone noticed the wind mix with the fire in a blazing firestorm that began to spread over the entire area as they quickly jumped back away from the flames. Suten, Suijinheki, water release. Water encampment wall, Kakashi shouted, sending out a wall of water to protect everyone else while it created a heavy mist over the area. It was then that they all jumped back when they noticed Kyubi emerge and hold out her hands. They watched as chakra, water, and yoki mixed together as she compressed it and drew her hands back. Don't really have a name for this. That would give me away, Kyubi said, keeping the last part to herself before she fired it. Everyone noticed Hiden quickly jump out while the ball entered the mist and exploded upon impact of anything, covering the very land in a thunderous explosion while they covered their eyes. What power! Who is Kanari-san to have that much chakra? Is that the S-rank technique people spoke of during the war? Kakashi wondered to himself. "Su heathens!" Hiden shouted, and they looked up to see him coming for them as he swung his scythe overhead. "Nara, go now!" Kyubi shouted, and Shikamaru jumped into the air and clashed with Hiden using a kunai. Hiden snarled at Shikamaru while Shikamaru glared back. He then withdrew his hand, showing Hiden's shadow connected to his own before they landed and ran off. Shikamaru hoped that they would be all right. He didn't know how he would face Naruto if he failed once again. He had his own things to deal with as he led Hiden into the forested areas. He would just have to trust that they didn't need him. Of course, with someone like Kanari on their side, then damn it if Shikamaru didn't think that they couldn't win. Meanwhile, the others noticed Kakazu get to his feet as he sneered at them all. Another of his demons was down, only leaving his fire and wind ones. Kyubi gave a smirk as she placed Samehada on her shoulder while Kakashi narrowed his eye. He's still up. We're going to have to do something to deal with him, Kakashi said while Kanari gave a small smile. I have an idea. You're going to have to be fast with this, Kanari said while Kakashi nodded his head. I will KO you all. Kakazu shouted, and quickly they all noticed tendrils pop out of the ground and converge together into a spear that quickly went for them all. Kyubi jumped out of the way, as did Kakashi, while Ino and Chuji stayed back. They watched as the demons merged with Kakazu and appeared on his shoulders while Kakazu quickly ran for Kakashi. The Jonin reacted fast and backflipped away while Kakazu rushed after him with a flurry of punches to catch the one-eyed Konoha Jonin off guard, but Kakashi blocked them all with his Sharingan and then dropped to the ground. Kakazu felt a surge of chakra and looked up as he noticed Kanari overhead. I won't fall for that again, Kakazu shouted as he sent a fireball into the air. Kyubi, noting the fire, quickly swung Samehada to gain momentum as she swirled out of the fireball's way and continued on her path. She s her foot into Kakazu's back, getting a wince from him before she used him as a platform and parkoured to another of the burnt trees, landing safely. Suten, Suiruden no Jutsu, Kakazu shouted, blasting a water dragon in her direction while Kyubi turned around. Kaiten, Kiryu Enjo, fire release, fire dragon incineration, Kyubi shouted, spewing a fierce fire that seemed to cover the sky in a light orange glow before it propelled forward and into the water jutsu, quickly equaling out from the temperature of the fire. Kyubi smirked while Kakazu growled. I have to admit that you are one of impressive skills, Kanari-san. It will be a pleasure to deliver you too. Nope. Not really. Nobody is taking me today. I have children to look after. Speaking of, I had better make this quick. I don't want them to wait for their mother. So I'll make quick work of you. Kyubi shouted from her perch and dived down while Kakazu growled. He then heard cackling as he turned to see Kakashi's right arm blazing in Raiten chakra. He glared up at the man while Kakazu smirked. So that's what you were planning to do. Impressive, but it's nowhere near good enough, Kakazu said as he took one tendril and it into the ground. Kakashi jumped away, losing the chakra in his arm with a curse while Kyubi swung Samehada, but missed as she caught herself on the ground with a crash. Kakazu then came spiraling down while Kyubi took Samehada over her head and Kakazu landed on the sword while Samehada's spikes into the soles of his feet, taking his chakra while Kyubi quickly yanked Samehada away, pushing Kakazu back while the sword's tongue rolled out just like a dog. What's that? You like an immortal man's chakra? Interesting. Is it better than mine? Kyubi asked, and Samehada clicked, saying that nothing was better than the red wine of its master. Oh, you flatterer, Kyubi said before she dodged from a foot stomp into the ground. Utilizing her flexibility, Kyubi flipped away before she gasped as a tendril wrapped around her arms and legs. It hoisted her into the air while the others looked surprised. Kanari-san. Kakashi shouted before he was taken as well by the tendrils. Kakashi cursed once again as he tried to get free, but they constricted his body even more while Kakazu brought Kanari in front of him. Well, Miss S. Rank Nin. Let's see you survive this, Kakazu said as his fire demon mask quickly got in Kanari's face. Kyubi widened her eyes while Kakashi did the same. Kanari-sensei. Ino shouted while Chuji gasped. Burn to ashes. Kaiten, Zukoku. Kakazu shouted and Kanari gasped before a fierce fire exploded in front of her and consumed her form, racing past her and into one of the tree, burning it alive while Kakashi, Ino and Chuji looked on with widened eyes. Kakazu had a smirk on his face before it turned to one of shock and fear as he felt a pull of his right arm. He noticed Kanari snarling at him with her red eyes burning from hatred for this bee before another hand reached Kakazu's face. What? How is she still alive? No human could survive this, Kakazu said before he noticed Kanari's body cover in red chakra. He gasped before the fire turned white hot, trying to consume her into its inferno. Kanari snarled as she used one of her tails to grab Samehada and hold the sentient sword overhead. You are annoying me, Kyubi shouted before she bursted her chakra and yoki through the air, ground, and trees in a massive explosion from just her power as it against Kakazu's body and sent him flying while having him let go of Kakashi, causing the Jonin to fall to the ground. Kakashi turned to Kanari and noticed that she had been perfectly fine. What was that chakra? Kakashi thought to himself, but he gasped as Kyubi swung at him. He dodged the strike and landed on Kanari's Samehada while he gasped. If you do one thing right, Hatake, then you're going to end this alive. Get going. Kanari shouted as she flung Kakashi forward while the Jonin's arm lit back up in Raiten. He noticed Kakazu come out of the destroyed trees, noting that Kakashi was charging him. That won't work, Kakazu shouted while he held out his hands and his masks twitched, but he heard cackling and turned around to see out of a tree came Kanari, with Samehada tied to her back, while said redhead held out her hand and Kakazu saw a bright, red sphere form in her hands. Kakazu widened his eyes as Kakashi and Kanari quickly closed in on him. Reikiri, Kirua, lightning blade, severing edge point, Kakashi shouted at the top of his voice. Yoko Rasengan, demon fox spiraling sphere, Kanari shouted and both S into Kakazu's front and back as Kakashi's technique L Kakazu's C meeting Kyuubi's technique and both clashed as Kakazu cried out in pain as Ino and Chuji were forced to cover their eyes when an intense flash of light came over the area. Kakashi and Kanari kept up the pace and screaming could still be heard as Kakashi's lightning destroyed the wind mask and Kanari's sphere destroyed the fire mask, and they both still had enough power to see through Kakazu easily as they landed to the ground opposite of each other. Kanari's arm twitched and Kakashi held his right hand, but they both heard a body flop down and turned to see Kakazu's on the ground. They turned to each other and slowly stood to their feet and Kanari only had one thing to say. Not bad, Hatake. Not bad at all, Kanari said while Kakashi widened his visible eye before giving a friendly eye smile. It was then that everyone heard an explosion off in the forest and Kanari smiled. You had better be settled with that, Nara. I know much more about revenge than you, Kyuubi thought to herself. A few minutes later, Kyuubi was proven right as Shikamaru came out of the bushes and glanced to everyone else. He nodded affirming their questions while Kanari sighed and slowly placed Samehada back into her backside. All right then. We've completed our assignment. Let's go back to the village and inform Hokage SA. Kanari paused before she touched her forehead. She closed her eyes and a vision flashed through her head. Satetsu, Sajin Sogeki, Iron Sand, Sand Blades Twin Strike, Naruto shouted as Iron Sand exploded from the ground and converged around Deodara while the blonde Akatsuki member smirked. Not good enough, Katsu. Deodara shouted while Naruto Susanoo quickly covered his body with its tail, stopping the assault. Kyuubi then, through Naruto's connection to her, heard Tsunade shout. Naruto, throw me. Tsunade shouted and Naruto sighed before he held out his hand. Kyuubi watched as Naruto lifted Tsunade into the air with an uproar of sand while the Godime threw her fist back and tried to sock Deodara, getting him to fall off. Oi, that's dangerous, you old hag. Deodara shouted, continuing to fly around while Naruto and Tsunade growled. The Anbu at their sides were continuing to fire Kaiten techniques to bring Deodara down while the blonde Akatsuki member just growled at them all for interfering in his conquest. Kanari-san, what's the matter? Are you okay? Kakashi asked, shaking Kyuubi from her thoughts. She turned to the others and they all noted the serious expression on her face. We're going back to Konoha on the double. Let's go. Kyuubi said, not giving them the time to give answers as Kakashi picked up the deceased Kakazu and ran off with a confused Kyuubi. Back in Konoha, with Naruto. Naruto and Tsunade lightly huffed while Deodara quickly began to spread his bombs around the area where Naruto was. Get back! Naruto shouted and the Anbu quickly did so as Naruto's hand lit up in Raiten chakra. Chidori Senbon, Naruto shouted, scattering thousands of tiny lightning-induced Senbon into the bombs, letting them fall harmlessly to the ground while Deodara continued to circle around. He sucked his teeth while Naruto glared at him and then bit his thumb. Kuchio's no jutsu, Naruto shouted and everyone noticed a large puff of smoke that quickly revealed a three-tailed fox with crimson fur. His eyes narrowed with a small grin on his face while Naruto stood atop his head. Obviously the fox was happy to be summoned by his master as his eyes looked up his head. How might I be of aid, Naruto-sama? The fox asked and Naruto slowly dispelled his Susanoo. Gian, I'm going to need fire and lots of it, Naruto said and Gian nodded as Naruto slowly took out Yugisa and Reiga. Deodara looked at the scene confused as he was before he noticed the large fox chuckle. As hot as you want, Naruto-sama, Gian said as he opened his mouth and quickly let out a stream of fire into the air, sending it sailing towards Deodara while Naruto placed Reiga in the fire and Yugisa over his back. Sing Reiga, Yugisa. Kamujin Senritsu, Divine Twin Blade Shiver, Naruto shouted and Raiga greatly intensified the flames before the blonde Rokudaime threw Yugisa into the fire. The sword quickly blew a great wind and mixed with the fire, bringing its power to a new height as Naruto and Gian gave the Anbu and the other shinobi and civilians a wonderful sight of an orange sky. However, Deodara wasn't amused. Oi oi, that's not funny Deodara shouted before he jumped off his bird and quickly sailed through the air. He held out his hand and, with a poof, made a faster and tighter bird that sped off while the other was engulfed in the hellish flames of Naruto and Gian's technique. Yugisa quickly fell to the ground with steam rolling off it while Deodara growled. Alright Hokage-sama, try this on for size. Deodara shouted as he opened his mouth and everyone grimaced when they saw clay spill out in copious amounts before it formed a very large Deodara clone. Naruto and the others gasped before the blonde closed his Mangekyo Sharingan and then switched it with the Byakugan. Naruto's eyes strained before, much to his horror, he noticed what was inside. Get back! Naruto shouted and everyone quickly moved away while Naruto and Tsunade stood side by side. What's the problem? Tsunade asked and Naruto turned to her. Bar-chan, punch the ground. I'm going to need some space, Naruto said and Tsunade blinked in confusion, but she nodded and jumped down before pushing her strength through her fist and broke the ground with one of her best punches, making the earth quake. Deodara grinned as he brought his hands together. Say goodbye, Deodara shouted while Naruto held up his hands. Satetsu, Kusa Boheiki, Iron Sand, Air Sand Protective Wall, Naruto spoke and Deodara noticed the sand begin to wrap around Deodara's massive clone just as it began to burst. Naruto felt his heart pump before he closed his eyes. Everyone watched and so did Deodara as Naruto quickly opened one of his eyes. Shinseinagan, Kamigami Fushi, Divine Light Eye, Immortality of the Gods, Naruto shouted. Something compelled him to do that and he watched in shock and awe as did everyone as white flames quickly exploded over Deodara's clone while Deodara himself was shocked at the turn of events. The clone exploded and Naruto watched as things began to burn, but they didn't get far as they quickly out from the white flames before the clone was covered by Naruto's iron sand. The flames didn't go past the line that Tsunade made and it was then that she found the purpose to it. I see. He really is Konoha's Rokudaime Hokage, Tsunade said to herself with a smile on her face while she stared at Naruto's back. The blonde looked up at Deodara while he looked down and Naruto chuckled. Now it's your turn. Go! Naruto shouted at the top of his voice and Gian opened his mouth while Deodara cursed his luck as he noticed Yugito and Fu quickly jump out. Say goodbye Akatsuki. Suten, Teikoku Suijin no Jutsu, Water Release, Imperial Water Encampment Technique, Fu shouted as shot a large spread of water from her mouth while Yugito placed her fingers together. Kaiten, Neko Enden, Yugito shouted sending out a massive fireball that quickly closed in over Deodara's form. Deodara snorted before he quickly moved out of the way of both attacks as they went into the sky. What was that supposed to do? He asked while Fu held up Yugito via her wings while Yugito smirked. Oh, distractions purposes, Yugito said and Deodara widened his eyes before looking back as he noticed Fu's water jutsu quickly spread out and reveal a Hiraishin kunai. Instantly Deodara noticed Naruto above him as the blonde came sailing down. Rasengan, Naruto shouted the ball into Deodara's body as the two quickly went into the ground causing a small crater. The Anbu and Jonin surrounded the crater and Naruto emerged angry as they noticed a clay clone. Naruto growled before he and the others heard laughing. Now then Hokage-sama, let me show you one of my best arts. I will leave a permanent mark on your village with my art. Behold C3. Deodara shouted while Naruto and the others looked up and they noticed Deodara hold out his hand. Naruto gasped before he hopped back to Gian and the fox threw him forward while Deodara held out his hand which held a large statue-like figurine. Naruto widened his eyes while Deodara cackled. Fall before my art. Deodara shouted dropping the bomb while Gian flung Naruto through the air while the blonde found himself right next to Yugito and Fu. Naruto's right eye twitched before he showed the M Sharingan and he strained his eyes over the bomb in front of him while people watched it expand to a vast size. Fall back! Fall back! One of the Jonin shouted, but they noticed Naruto's breathing hitch as he turned. Yugi-chan, Fu-chan. Give me some help. Naruto said as his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan's eyes glared dangerously from his eyes. Yugito and Fu quickly nodded while seals appeared on Fu's hands. She held one out while Yugito quickly performed some hand signs. Deodara widened his eyes and a maniac grin appeared on his face as the bomb was close to bursting before everyone noticed Naruto's Susanoo begin to swirl its tails before 9 small Magatama came around each individual tail. Naruto took notice of them before he s his hands together. Kaiten, Mugen Ruka no Jutsu, Fire Release, Infinite Dragon Flames Technique, Yugito shouted as she launched a roaring fire from her mouth and into the skies. Fuinjutsu, Gogyogen, Sealing Art, 5 Elemental Sphere, Fu shouted as she quickly formed her best technique and threw it. That's right, because seals were the things powering her jutsu and not just her chakra, then she was able to throw it. The only reason she didn't throw it at Sasuke during those Chunin exams was, well, what do you think would happen if she missed? Bad B would happen, that's what. So, Fu quickly took a hold of her sphere as she slowly felt the immense chakra circulating in her hands. She then grinned like mad and then threw the sphere with all her strength. Yasaka Magatama, Yasaka beads, Naruto shouted as his guardian's tails quickly launched one of its tails and flung the 9 Magatama surrounding that tail towards Deodara's bomb. The Anbu and Jonin gasped as the 9 swirls, Elemental Sphere, and Kaiten Jutsu met with the bomb before it quickly began to get sucked away into nothingness until a large explosion came lighting the skies, forcing many to cover their eyes from the sight, but Naruto made sure that the explosion affected nothing in the village as Deodara widened his eyes while Naruto had one thought while touching his eye. That was so B. Naruto thought before he safely landed on Gian's head. Naruto-sama, are you okay? Gian asked while Fu and Yugito landed right next to Naruto. Haku did the same and Naruto turned around. How is everyone? Naruto asked worriedly and Haku quickly gave a salute. Not too many injured except for the people from the Hokage mansion. Shizune-san and I are currently helping. Most of the populace have been evacuated, Haku said while Naruto nodded thankfully. That's good. Then I'll be able to get started, Naruto said as, for the first time he was able to do this. He released his gravity seals across his body and his clothes as they dispelled. Everyone suddenly felt the presence of massive chakra from Naruto as soon it seemed to just be able to stand to her feet. She panted while Deodara sweated. Oi oi, looks like I really pissed him off. I'd better go home, Deodara nodded to himself before he heard a voice. And where do you think you're going? Naruto asked from behind Deodara. The blonde bomber gasped then looked back to see that Naruto wasn't on top of Gian's head anymore. What the F? Deodara shouted before Naruto grinned. Fu-chan, do it now. Naruto shouted and Deodara turned around as he noticed Fu do a hand sign. Hiden, Rinpungakure no Jutsu, secret tradition, hiding in scale power technique, Fu shouted as she blew a large quantity of powder from her mouth covering Deodara and Naruto at the same time as their field of vision disappeared. Suddenly Deodara found that it was very dark. Like, very, very dark. As in he couldn't even see his hand dark. Where the hell am I? Deodara wondered before he winced as he was punched in the face. Deodara stepped back before he was kicked in the stomach sending him to the ground. Deodara grunted and wiped his chin while Naruto smirked. Above Naruto's head were 2 fox ears that twitched back and forth while his eyes quickly remain S. Yoko Senpo, Raisin Rasengan, Demon Fox Sage Art, Spiraling Thunder Serial Spheres, Naruto shouted pushing 2 lightning-based Rasengans into Deodara's sea while the blonde gasped and screamed in pain while Gian's mouth hissed out smoke. He coughed slightly before opening his mouth as Naruto and Deodara rolled out into the ground. Naruto grinned while his ears twitched. Deodara coughed up B from his mouth before glaring at Naruto. I hate to admit it, but you're the first person that I've ever shown my Sage mode to. I wanted to keep that a secret for a little longer, Naruto said while Deodara snarled. He looked out drearily and noticed that they weren't anywhere near Konoha, but a simple forested area. Damn, you, Deodara said with another snarl. He grunted as he crawled along the hard ground, but he didn't get very far before Naruto stood over him. You're finished, Naruto said while Deodara snickered. He looked back at the blonde Rokudaime Hokage while Naruto looked down at him. No. I won't lose to those eyes. Those damn eyes that reject my art. I hate the Sharingan. I can't stand losing to an Uchiha, but I'll be damned if I lose to a non-Uchiha before I Uchiha Itachi or Uchiha Sasuke. Deodara shouted while Naruto widened his eyes before he noticed Deodara's stomach get bigger. Katsu. Deodara shouted, covering Naruto in a large explosion away from Konoha while Gian placed a paw over his eyes. Naruto-sama. Gian shouted before he noticed Naruto leap back into one of the nearby trees. The blonde's ears twitched several times while his eyes were looking left and right for any sign of Deodara. Naruto's Sage Mode was a product of taking demonic chakra and using it to extend his abilities. Kyuubi had instructed him in it in her downtime, but she would be very surprised when Naruto would say that he mastered it. Kyuubi told him that it was the same as trying to take in natural energy, but for demonic chakra then the blonde didn't have to be still. He could keep moving while taking in all that he needed. Kyuubi had told him that, for as long as she could remember, all types of chakra existed. Not just natural chakra, but unnatural chakra. It wasn't a good thing actually. Virtually, Naruto was taking the life from the grass, trees, everything to make it work. It wasn't one of the purest Sage Modes that Kyuubi told him about. Naruto's eyes suddenly darted to the left and he growled as he jumped into the air. With a burst of chakra, he flew forward punching a tree and letting it crash to the ground, revealing Deodara in complete shock while he stared into the red eyes of Naruto. Deodara quickly jumped back while Naruto watched him go. The blonde landed on the ground and Deodara smirked as Naruto's foot sank. The blonde looked down before the ground under him exploded. "Ha! How do you like my land mines? They are everywhere," Deodara said while Naruto blinked. He looked across the barren ground before smirking as he brought his hand together. "Then I'll just raise the ground up. Satetsu, Yusa Bakuryu, Iron Sand, Quicksand Waterfall Flow," Naruto shouted and Deodara lost his breath as Iron Sand quickly plunged from the ground in various explosions before it towered over Deodara's form. "Why don't you just Deodara shouted as the sand quickly poured over him while Naruto placed his hands over it. "Sabaku Taiso, Sand Waterfall Imperial Funeral," Naruto shouted and crushed the sand, bringing it down until he heard another explosion. Naruto raised an eyebrow before he noticed Deodara quickly fly into the sky. Seeing him leave, Naruto sighed as he took out a kunai. "I've had enough of this. I still have to deal with that other guy that I just saw," Naruto saw and threw his kunai forward. It sailed through the air for Deodara's location before Naruto vanished in the Hiraishin. He quickly appeared near Deodara and let out a punch. Deodara smirked as he dodged the punch by an inch before he felt a heavy impact of chakra hit his face and send him flying through the trees and into the ground. Deodara coughed while Naruto landed down. "Your chakra is running low. You do well to stop this right now before I KU, Naruto said while Deodara snarled. "F you." He shouted and from his hands came two snakes that wrapped themselves around Naruto's body. The young blonde was not amused before he touched Fukun, sending a heavy burst of lightning through his body, incinerating the snakes easily. Deodara backed away while Naruto stepped forward. "Damn you. Damn you. Damn you. I don't care anymore, Leader Sama. I just want him He will by my greatest art," Deodara shouted as he tore off his torso. Naruto stopped and he noticed a mouth in Deodara's sea. The young Akatsuki member took out a handful of clay and Naruto watched as the mouth in his sea ate it. "You will not escape, Hokage-sama. Not from this. I will destroy everything with this art. You are deserving of it. Now you have pain. Feel fear. Have despair," Deodara shouted as the color left his body and it all went into a large hole in his sea. It began to crack and break while Naruto widened his eyes. "Gian, get out of here," Naruto shouted as Gian quickly vanished while Naruto raced off, leaving Deodara while the young blonde chuckled. "Art is an explosion," Deodara shouted at the top of his voice as the mask broke, sending out a massive explosion that continued to grow in size while Naruto quickly closed his eyes. He could feel the trees being torn by their roots from the explosion as he continued to jump away. He felt a ringing from one of his seals on his house as he was ready to Hiraishin away. "Naruto." The blonde opened his eyes and looked down at the ground in shock. "Sakura, what are you doing here?" Naruto asked while Sakura shook her head, but she continued to run from the blast as well before Naruto landed down and grabbed a hold of her. He then vanished from the area while the explosion continued to rage through the forest. Naruto and Sakura fell to the ground with a cough as the blonde winced when he touched his shoulder. He snarled before he looked in front of him and noticed Sato pick up Reiga and Yugisa. What happened to Nibi-chan and Nanabi-chan? Naruto thought in worry. Earlier, Konoha, with Nibi and Nanabi. Both Bayu growled as they continued to fight against Sato, who still couldn't remember why he was so angry with the two of them yet would like nothing more than to see the deaths. He felt conflicted, but the more they fought the more Raijin was trying to break control of his problem. Good, it was frustrating. Nibi caught Sato's blade, but the impact made her feet crush the ground while Nanabi hopped over her. She kicked Sato in the face, bringing him on the rebound as he backflipped away. Nanabi landed, but Nibi was right behind her as the sounds of clashing could be heard from the three. Their forms were a blur to anyone watching as the Raijin S at Nibi's kimono. She quickly jumped back while Nanabi formed an overhead heel kick. Sato blocked that before he noticed Nanabi channel her chakra through her body, making the ground crack before it exploded from her power. She then hopped back and stood next to Nibi while Sato jumped back to a building. He couldn't stop the grin on his face while Nibi and Nanabi didn't look the least bit winded. Careful, Nibi. Remember that we're the only ones who can actually touch the Raijin without having our souls taken. However, we can't be careless, Nanabi said while Nibi nodded. He's gotten stronger. If not for the fact that he wasn't controlled, then this would be much harder, Nibi said, and Nanabi agreed before they noticed Sato jump towards him, letting the shock wave leave a dent on the house he was standing out. Nibi and Nanabi assumed their stances before they felt another huge power. They turned their heads as they noticed QBS her foot into Sato's face. The anger in her eyes was clearly evident before she propelling Sato through the ground and several other buildings before landing on the same ground. I'm gone for half the morning and you guys are dealing with him. Shame on you, QB said while Nibi and Nanabi snorted. And whose fault is that? Nanabi retorted while QB shrugged her shoulders innocently. However, the three female Bayu turned back as they noticed Sato emerge. His Akatsuki cloak was torn, but he didn't care about that. No, his hands were trembling. His grin turned into a large conniving smirk while his sword blazed in dark chakra, producing a black flame. Your soul will be mine. I don't know why, but I hate you. I hate you the most. Sato shouted as he instantly appeared in front of Kyubi in a blinding speed. Kyubi took up Samehada and blocked the Raijin while she felt Samehada click urgently. You don't like this chakra and you're scared. I didn't think you could get scared. Oh well, I want to wring his end with my hands anyway, Kyubi thought as she jumped back and quickly placed Samehada on her back. Nibi and Nanabi were about to ask before Kyubi shot forward. She and Sato banged their fists against each other, releasing the pent-up chakra in their bi as their eyes reflected their hatred for one another before a series of punches and kicks followed after breaking and tearing the ground apart. Soon Nibi and Nanabi followed after them as they continued in their own while Sato was forced to block against all three of them. Sato felt his body rush in excitement as they all continued releasing shock waves through the area while before he jumped into the air. Kenjutsu, Teikoku Jizai, sword technique, Imperial Will, Sato shouted as he quickly held his sword overhead and then the ground, releasing black flames pushing Kyubi, Nanabi and Nibi back as they landed on the rooftops. Nanabi quickly opened her palm and formed something before closing it and held her hand back. Bayukage Dama, tailed beast shadow bomb, Nanabi shouted as she threw the small object forward and watched as it expanded in size while Sato held out his sword. He quickly clashed with it as he felt his sword grind against it. The black flames slowly began to consume Nanabi's technique while Nibi jumped into the air. Her hands together, she, discreetly, took out a single tail as the techniques dissipated. Sato gave a smirk before he noticed Nibi's fist as she socked him in the face before she noticed Sato use her momentum against her as he brought his sword to her sides. Kinjutsu no Raijin, Ninjendo, forbidden technique of Raijin, human path, Sato said as his sword Nibi in her side. The two-tailed demon cat widened her eyes as did Kyubi and Nanabi before Nibi was into the ground. She watched as Sato grinned as he began to pull her soul out of her body forcefully. Nibi snarled before she quickly using her yoki and grabbed it back. Just let me see the life drain for your eyes as I ku. Forget this village and forget what's his name. I just want you three to by my sword. Sato said as he and Nibi continued to pull her soul through the sword and back into her body. I'm not going to you. Stealing Two-san's techniques is unforgivable. Nibi said while Sato just raised an eyebrow. Two-san, please. I've had these techniques since as long as I have had Raijin at my side, Sato said before he heard a yell. He quickly noticed Nanabe coming down before he quickly held out his hand and grabbed her before her into the ground. Kinjutsu no Raijin, Gakido, forbidden technique of the Raijin, Preta path, Sato said. He smirked as he channeled his chakra through Nana's body and the seven-tailed Bayu felt her very presence leave the world as her chakra started to be taken away by Sato. He chuckled at their struggling forms before he looked up and was forced to jump back as Kyubi planted her foot into the ground with a heavy crash. You two always did need to be looked after the most, Kyubi said while Nanabe and Nibi coughed. They glared back while Sato smiled. That's it. Come on and fight me, Sato said before he and the others noticed a large explosion in the distance. Sato gave a small smile and turned back. Looks like I'll have to deal with you later. I have some fun things to have done, Sato said while Kyubi frowned. Don't think I'll let you leave. You're not going over there, Kyubi growled out before she dashed towards Sato. They quickly clenched their hands together as the crater in the village quickly began to break apart. Sato laughed while Kyubi's frown deepened before her danger senses heightened as she was swiftly kicked in the stomach. Kyubi coughed while Sato jumped into the air before he noticed Kyubi hold out her hands. He's in the air. This shouldn't affect the village any more than it should. Bijudama, Kyubi shouted sending her bomb towards Sato before he looked back and noticed it coming for him. Sato quickly twirled his body and watched it pass him by the skin of his teeth before it raced off. He looked back with an annoyed look while Kyubi gave him her best determined one. You will be dealt with later, miss, Sato said before he vanished in dark flames. Damn it, that's where Naruto-kun is. Nana, let's go, Kyubi said and they nodded as they dashed off with the Anbu right behind him. The only reason that they Anbu weren't fighting with them was because Kyubi requested that they not. While Kyubi, in the eyes of the village, was just a Jonin, she was still one of the highest ones and as such could overrule the Anbu if the need arose as could Nibi and Nanabe. With Naruto and Sakura, this energy, what do I feel from you? Why do I remember you? Sato asked feeling Reiga while the sword gasped. Yugisa did the same as they felt Sato's power blast through them. Reiga's eyes lost their warmth while Yugisa's eyes did the same. Both dropped their hands to their sides and their white space suddenly grew black. Nice to see you both again, Reiga and Yugisa turned their heads as they noticed Raijin with her pleasant smile. Raijin, it is good to see you as well, Reiga and Yugisa said to her getting Raijin to nod her brunette head. Outside, the black flames consumed Reiga as the sword turned to a dark red handle. The handle for Yugisa changed to a pure dark handle while Sato suddenly felt the flames of his heart ignited. It felt good, very, very good. He loved this feeling. Why was it that he felt so empowered? A feeling unlike any he had ever felt before. Much better than when he tore the souls from people. Much better than his K of the lower species, humans. This Kami-like feeling. It was without a doubt ecstasy. Sato turned his head as he noticed Naruto get to his feet. The blonde glared at him while Sato stared back. It looks like you took care of my partner. I will have to inform Master about this. I bid you farewell, Rokudaime, Sato said as he disappeared with a burst flames. Reiga, Yugisa, Tyron shouted while Fukun and Sira held him back. Tyron, calm down. He's gone. There is nothing we can do for them now, Sira said while Tyron widened his eyes. He sucked his teeth before he punched the white space they shared with his fist. Meanwhile Naruto breathing suddenly felt ragged. He looked down and he noticed a large S across his torso. He hit me and I didn't notice it, Naruto said and his eyes rolled to the back of his head before he dropped to the ground. The only sounds that were blurred were the sounds of people shouting, Naruto, Hokage-sama, Rokudaime-sama, and Naruto-kun. To him before he faded into unconsciousness. Kyubi, Nibi, and Nanabe dropped to the ground as they noticed Naruto along with, much to their surprise, Sakura, or at least who they thought might have been her. The Anbu quickly dropped behind them as Kushina quickly pushed through them. Sochi, Kushina said as she knelt and held Naruto to her lap. She placed a hand on his forehead and trailed her hands down while noticing the slightly deep gash on his side. Kushina sighed before turning around. Prep the hospital and call Tsunade Senju, Shizune Kato, and Haku Uzumaki Namikaze. Also call a council meeting, Kushina said while the Anbu nodded and rushed off while Kushina, with the help of Nanabe, took Naruto and rushed off while Nibi grabbed Sakura. Kyubi turned her head and looked out into the wilderness before snorted. You'd better not come back. I was held back for the sake of Naruto-kun's village, though I still find them unworthy of it. He doesn't. I honored his wishes. If I see you then I won't hesitate like I had done, Kyubi said before she dashed off leaving the destroyed field alone. Nighttime, council room. The council assembled from the civilian side to the shinobi side with Sum representing the UNI clan. Even Kushina was there representing the Anbu department, which she had to adorn a mask for that. Luckily she had her own mask which was different from the others. Hers was just red, with black fox whisker marks on its side. She was called Akashi for a reason. She was the Red Death after all. Soon the doors opened and everyone noticed Tsunade had come through the doors. She glanced at everyone in the room before sitting in Naruto's chair. Since Naruto was down then Tsunade took the reins for the time being. I'll make this quick. Naruto is fine, Tsunade said and everyone breathed sighs of relief for their Rokudaime, especially Kushina and Sum, before Tsunade placed her hand up. He'll be in the hospital for about a week or so, but we can thank the Kyubi for that. No doubt it's healing him as we speak. The gash in his side is slowly closing, but it seems that a large portion of his chakra was stolen from that gash by unknown means. Fu is working with the barrier division on how Akatsuki got in the village in the first place. The village is still in high alert while construction continues, Tsunade said, and with the worst of it gone, everyone began to breathe and think more level-headedly. Akashi, your report, Tsunade said, and Kushina stood to her feet. The one who infiltrated the village was S-rank missing Nin Deodara from Iwa. We have yet to determine his partner, but Kanari has informed us that his name is called Sato Saranzo and he's not to be trifled with. He has no affiliation with any other nation or group until Akatsuki, so we can't figure his strength just yet, but I do agree with Kanari's assessment, Kushina spoke while others murmured. Kakashi Hatake did come here with the body of Kakazu from Taki. Shikamaru Nara managed to take care of his partner, hidden. They were on their way to Konoha. It seems that Akatsuki is getting desperate to acquire the Nibi, Nanabe, and Kyubi. To outright attack our Rokudaime shows their hubris, Hiashi said with his arms folded. Well, we have put a dent in their plans and their members. Naruto-sama managed to defeat Deodara from Iwa, so that's 3 members down without excluding Kisame-san, Chusa said, getting others to nod. And what of the youngest heir to the UNI clan? Shibi asked while Sum smiled. Since she is young then Yuna will have to wait to help lead the clan with Kiba. However, she is safe. The Anbu moved Kasumi and Yuna to a secure location. The same could be said for the twins Momiji and Yatara. They are being watched by Tayuya and Kimimaro, Sum said while Shibi just nodded and let the issue go. That aside, we're going to have to increase the difficulty of the Jonin exams. We've been too lax during this time that this happened. I already left this office so I can't really make the decision. Once he wakes up then I'll run it by Naruto, Tsunade said, and the others agreed with that plan of action. What's the damage count? Came a new voice as everyone glanced to the side to see Ibiki glancing down to the civilians. That's right, Ibiki Morino had taken over the position of the next advisor at Naruto's side since the blonde had lost Sarutobi to old age. In truth, there wasn't a reason to not have him. Ibiki was one of the brightest minds, Naruto had figured. His input really mattered to Naruto, and the blonde felt that the head of interrogation could benefit the village at his side. Naturally, Ibiki was happy to help with it. It's not like he had anything better to do. Getting back to the issue, one civilian stood to his feet. Hi, there are 34k and 89 injured. This is only the number because the Anbu were fast to respond to the threat and evacuate. We also have Hokage-sama to thank for dealing with most of it and protecting the village, one of the civilians said, and Ibiki nodded before the man continued. The most damage was done to the market district. It will take a while to bring that up, and luckily the academy wasn't destroyed because it wasn't the intended target. However, we will now have to work on bringing in money to rebuild the Hokage mansion, he said while Inoki placed some papers. Did we just get a large quantity of money from the trade routes from Naruto-sama's Shugyoten? Inoki asked, and everyone blinked. We have to move some things around, but that might just cover everything. We could even make some necessary improvements now, Tsunade said while others murmured to each other. I know this is off topic, but what about the person that was with Hokage-sama? Chooser asked, and everyone turned to him, and Tsunade tapped her finger on the table. That's right. Sakura Haruno returned to the village today from her 1-year revelation. I can't believe she got caught up in that blast. Good thing Naruto protected her from the brunt of the explosion. However, she is resting peacefully. A few bruises and scratches, but otherwise she will recover in about a day or two. Funny, I almost didn't recognize her, she's so different, Tsunade said mostly to herself. Hospital. Kyuubi and Hana shushed Yutara and Momiji as they continued to sleep. They had been crying since they found out that their mother was missing along with their father. So what happens now? Hana asked, cradling Yutara while Kanari sighed. I don't know. I'm having trouble healing it perfectly, but I'll get it done soon. Just give me some time, Kyuubi said, focusing her energy to try and continue healing Naruto as much as she could. She never thought that Sato would drive a gash into Naruto's side and steal most of his chakra in that time. However, Kanari couldn't fault that because Naruto had been down and out of luck at that point. Both heard walking as they turned to see Kasumi holding Yuna, who had gotten bigger slightly, in her arms with Taiyo and Kimimaro right behind her. Kyuubi-sama, Hana-san, how is Naruto-sama? Kasumi asked while Kanari sighed again. She seemed to be doing that a lot lately. She really didn't like it. He'll be fine, Kasumi. Don't worry about it. I won't have him mess on us. Besides, he's too stubborn to do so, Kyuubi said, trying to reassure Kasumi, and she only managed a small smile from the container of the ruby while Yuna continued to sleep in her mother's arms. It would be another half an hour that they would talk or anything would happen. Those 30 minutes passed so slowly for the three females before they heard the clattering of footsteps. They looked up and noticed Haku coming from around the corner with a chart. The ice user noticed the three and gave a slight smile. You can see Naruto-kun if you want now, but not too long, Haku said, opening the door. Hana stiffened and looked away, slightly ashamed. She felt like she didn't desire to do so right now. Kyuubi noticed that action, but chose to ignore it as she and Kasumi made their way inside, and they noticed Naruto with his eyes closed. His blonde hair shined from the light of the ceiling lamp as a machine beeped multiple times. Never have I seen Naruto-sama like this. I don't like it, Kasumi said as she brushed a piece of Naruto's hair. Kyuubi nodded to her statement. You'll have to put up with it though. They might have come for Fu-san, Yugito-san, and Naruto-kun, but they are going to be coming after you as well, Kyuubi said, trying not to be so familiar with saying that they were after Nibi, Nanabi and herself, since a good few Anbu were hidden in the room. I know. I've been training a few days ago and I'm back in active duty now, Kasumi said while Kyuubi blinked. Yeah, about that. Originally you were a ninken. You were Naruto's animal companion before we did this. So, what are you now? Kyuubi asked, and Kasumi twitched. Her black tail flipped left and then right, showing her confusion. I do not know. Do you think Naruto-sama would test me for the Jonin exams? Kasumi asked, and Kanari placed one leg over the other and placed her arms underneath her ample bee, which had gotten bigger not only from Naruto's use, but also from the twins and their suckling. That would be up to him, but I'm sure he'll have no reservations with this, Kyuubi said, and Kasumi nodded with a smile on her face. Well, I'm glad that this is taken care of, but on to another issue. Tsukasa has been rather tense since this evening. She won't tell me why. Can you shed any light on that? Kasumi asked, and Kyuubi growled tiredly while she placed her head into her hands. Sato took 2 of Naruto-kun's 5 swords, Kyuubi said, trying to make it sound as bad as possible, and Kasumi's face scrunched up. What? Well, which ones did he take? Kasumi asked, affirming Tsukasa's fears as the white-haired woman paced the grounds of her mindscape in absolute worry while Kyuubi decided to answer Kasumi's question. He took the ones Reiga and Yugisa, Kyuubi said, and Kasumi blinked before she looked at the ground, and with Kyuubi's hundreds, if not thousands, of years of knowledge in reading people, she was able to notice the look in Kasumi's face. Without them, they would never see Kami again, something Kyuubi was secretly happy about but wouldn't dare say. Kyuubi and Kasumi knew that Naruto held a special attachment to Reiga. He was the blonde's first sword, well, first sentient sword anyway. To lose him of all people was going to be disheartening. Get them back. We have to get them back. We've got to get them back, Tsukasa said with urgency evident in her voice that was taken notice of by Kasumi. Tsukasa-san, calm down. We'll get Naruto-sama's swords back. What are you so worried about? Kasumi asked while Tsukasa continued to pace around with a look of fear etched into her beautiful face. It was very unbecoming of such a woman having such a feature. No, Kasumi-san, you don't understand. We have to get those two back. There is a reason why Kami never allowed her children to have all 5 swords. He's taken 2 already. Add them to the Raijin then. Tsukasa trailed off as fear became etched into her face. It was a type of worry that didn't seem to belong on the face of a beautiful woman such as her. Her feet paced through the floor for the mindscape before she ultimately fell down to her knees to force herself to meditate. She wanted to see a positive end to all of this, but was there one? She would have to think. Think very, very hard about this. Damn it, this couldn't get any worse. Somewhere else. Sato bowed towards Toby once all the remaining Akatsuki members dispersed out while the masked man narrowed his eyes. I was unable to retrieve the Nibi Jinchuriki or the Nanabi Jinchuriki Tobi-sama. I express my apologizes that I also, Sato said, his high gone and his will now under Toby's complete control again, but his eyes just seemed to have the slightest bit of life to them that not even Toby could take away. He kept his head low to avoid Toby's gaze while said Akatsuki member just didn't relay any kind of emotion and turned around. Do not let it bother you. I never expected you to really succeed. If anything, you did a lot more than I thought. No doubt Konoha is going to be a mess for a while, Toby said before he eyed 2 of Sato's new swords that were strapped to his waist. He looked at them before he decided not to care anymore. Just trivial things, he figured. So, how is Rokudaime Hokage Naruto? Toby asked and Sato bowed. His S brushed my sword and I remember a deep gash to his side. My sword is very potent, Tobi-sama. He will not survive this night, Sato said while Toby's eye suddenly came to a glare while a dark smile came across his face. Is that right? Well then that's sufficient news, Toby said more to himself than to Sato, but the swordsman heard him regardless. He watched as Toby took off his mask while he glared forward into the darkness of the cave. Commence the plan, Toby said while Sato bowed with a slight nod. Seeing all of this, Raijin snarled while Reiga and Yugisa raised their eyebrows. Now do you see what I mean? Raijin asked as she flipped her hair. Reiga gave a dark glare before he nodded. I do see. We must release Sato-sama at once, Reiga said and Raijin quickly agreed with him before she purred and laid her head on Reiga's shoulder. So lonely was she that she finally had her beloved at her side. The darkness slowly taking over his heart so that he would come to suit her needs. She took his head and turned him to her while she gave a cute smile. Will you help me? She asked and Reiga quickly nodded, not seeing the problem. The dark energy swirled around his body as Reiga gave a light smirk. On my life, Reiga answered while Raijin gave a dark chuckle. I'll hold you to that then, she said before both turned to Yugisa who sported a stern look across his face, in contrast to the warm, yet solid looks that he always had. That won't be easy, you two. Not to mention we still have to get Fukun, Sira, and Tyron, but they will come in time. So what shall we do about Sato-sama? Yugisa asked while Raijin snickered. Oh, we'll think of something. After all, we've got all the time in the world, Raijin said with a flirty chuckle of her voice before she pulled away from Reiga and sat on the dark floor of the mindscape shared between the 3 sentient swords. Back in Konoha Hospital. The lights were out. Night settled through the village. Visiting hours were over. In Naruto's room, Haku stood writing some things down while the young blonde continued to sleep. She looked over his body and gave a heavy sigh. Naruto-kun, seeing you like this, I don't want that. If you had then I would have never known the love that you shared to the others because I was too hesitant. All because of my selfishness, Haku thought to herself as she brushed some of his hair out of the way from his face. She looked at his cute whisker marks and gently smiled. I'm so sorry. Can I be a little more selfish? Haku asked mentally as she moved over and gently kissed Naruto's lips. She realized that they were very much warm as she felt the sweet taste that they provided. Why was she so scared to give herself to Naruto? She couldn't answer that, but that hesitance seemed to be gone just for now. Haku pulled back and slipped her soft hands through Naruto's cheek. I will come back tomorrow and check on you. Good night, Naruto-kun, Haku said as she closed the door. The only ones who were watching the room were the Anbu. Being one that volunteered for the mission, had a small look of pride his face. Not for the situation, but for how his Hokage could still look so peaceful despite all the things that happened. He was only like half his age and yet he did things that seemed to make him just like his father and the others. He hoped he would wake up soon. This reminded him too much of how the Sandaime was when he had seen him last, but Bo could say that he enjoyed the quiet as did the rest of the Anbu. However, soon the room began to become saturated with chakra. The Anbu were alerted instantly as they dropped down to the ground. They looked left and right, but saw no sign of an enemy nin before they heard out of control beeping. They turned back and they noticed Naruto's body twitch. Hokage-sama, one of the Anbu said while Bo widened her eyes. Get a medic. Bo shouted out offered it and one of the Anbu quickly vanished without a word before everyone found it hard to breathe. They dropped to the ground with their legs paralyzed in fear and shock. They looked up as they noticed white flames burst from Naruto's body before a loud roar came. They also saw a wave of black flame quickly appear and then be destroyed by the white flames. Amazingly, Naruto's eyes were still closed as he seemed to be unaware while the machines broke into pieces. Rokudaime-sama, what is happening to you? Bo wondered to himself worriedly before he and the other remaining Anbu noticed Naruto's eyes open. He leaned up and they stood in shock of the purple, rippled, pattern in his eyes as the flames seemed to dance around the room not harming any of them, but no less hot as flames were. Naruto glared down at the Anbu in front of him with a stern look. A look that all the Hokage had possessed. It was a look that not just anyone could pull off. It was a look that made the Anbu give absolute respect to. They watched as Naruto closed his eyes and then fell back to the bed while the flames dispersed. The Anbu gulped as a bead of sweat fell down their faces. They didn't know what to make of this before they heard the sounds of rushing footsteps as Shizune bursted through the door and noticed the destroyed machines. What happened? Shizune asked out demanded to know, but all the Anbu were in a state of extreme shock. Bo managed to open his mouth to answer Shizune, but the brunette medic could see he was trembling. Hokage-sama has awoken. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.